by to release. Ready, now.
All through early 1965, bombs continued to fall on North Vietnam.
Ready.
Johnson thought he could force Ho Chi Minh to bargain. I saw our bombs as political resources for negotiating peace, he said. But Ho couldn't be pushed. Their positions were irreconcilable.
Ho Chi Minh and the communists had no intention whatsoever of ever allowing a peace treaty to separate their country. They could certainly wait out Lyndon Johnson. Ho Chi Minh was a revolutionary. Johnson didn't understand that. He didn't understand revolutionaries. He didn't understand the history of the Vietnamese people, the Vietnamese culture.
On March 15th, Johnson met with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and General Harold K. Johnson made a prediction that sent a shockwave through the room. To win the war, he said, it could take 5 years and 500,000 men. Now Johnson knew the stakes. To keep South Vietnam from falling, he might have to commit hundreds of thousands of American boys to a full-scale land war in Asia. He was face to face with a decision he had been dreading. If I don't go in now and they show later I should have gone, then they'll be all over me in Congress. They won't be talking about my civil rights bill or education. No, sir. Every Tuesday, Johnson had lunch with his principal advisors. If you can show me any reasonable out, I'll grab it, he told them. But to give in would be a sign of weakness. Of all his advisors, only one was ready to challenge the conventional wisdom that Johnson had no choice but to send in troops. Under-Secretary of State George Ball.
I thought that the balloon was going up much too fast. So I spent a few nights preparing a memorandum, which is 75 pages or so, which is now in the public domain, in which I challenged every assumption of our war in Vietnam, and came to the conclusion that it wasn't a war we could win.
George Ball's telling Johnson, look, you're going to lose in Vietnam. You're going to end up with a protracted war that will divide America. At the end of 3 or 4 or 5 years, you're going to be in Vietnam with 500,000 American troops, and you're not going to accomplish your political objective. And it must be shocking to him. I mean, what if George Ball's right? Now, from his military advisors, he hears the same thing. It's going to be a long, protracted war in the jungles of Vietnam. 4, 5 years, 500,000 troops, 600,000 troops. This must have been extraordinary pressure on this man at this one period. What do I do? Is George Ball right? Are the military commanders right? Is this going to be a quagmire? How would Johnson explain to the American people that the country that John Kennedy had promised to defend, that Dwight Eisenhower had promised to defend, wasn't worth defending any longer? Had the people changed? Had our commitment to freedom changed? Or was it the fact that we couldn't defeat the North Vietnamese?
Johnson grew more and more grim. Everything I knew about history, he said, told me that if I got out of Vietnam and let Ho Chi Minh run through the streets of Saigon, then I'd be doing exactly what they did in World War II. I'd be giving a big fat reward to aggression. The war was careening out of control. South Vietnam was about to fall. Johnson could hesitate no longer. He would have to decide, escalate or withdraw. At the end of July, he invited his advisors to a remarkable series of meetings that lasted all week. Once again, Ball argued his case. We cannot win. This war will be long and protracted. And once again, Ball was shot down. Secretary of Defense McNamara assured the president that we could win within 2.5 years. There was no risk of a catastrophe. But Ball continued to argue, take what precautions we can, Mr. President. Take our losses, negotiate, discuss, knowing full well there will be a probable takeover by the communists.
It would have been terribly difficult to do what George Ball urged, which was straight withdrawal. It would have been, I think, very damaging to the country. It would have been very divisive.
After months of doubt, the president made his decision. He had inherited a limited war. Now, he chose to expand it.